are going to go over what exactly our pumpkin will need if we are trying to grow a pumpkin. So I have a piece of paper. It's called What My Pumpkin Needs. And I'm going to be going through it with you, and we're going to talk about what does the pumpkin need, what do all plants need in order to grow and survive. I'm going to be using crayons to help me fill it in as I go. You can use colored pencils or markers, whatever you have. And these are things, as we're going through, that every plant does need to grow. So some of them you may know, some you may not realize they need, and you probably knew it but never really thought about it as something that they would need. Just like we need things to grow and to survive and to become strong and big, so does a plant. So we're going to see what things our pumpkin will need, because we are going to grow a pumpkin and a pumpkin. So we want to make sure we are giving it everything it needs, just like your families give you everything you need. You might notice that some of the things are similar to things you may need as well. So are you ready? Our first thing is a pumpkin or a plant needs light. So this is a picture of the sun. When you think about it, the sun helps our plant. It actually helps it by giving it food, which is crazy, I know, because the light of the sun doesn't seem like it really be food, but it kind of is for a plant. So most plants have leaves or some structure similar to a leaf that actually likes to almost sunbathe or sit in the sun, and it takes that sunlight and it turns it into energy and food for the plant. So plants love sun, they love light. There might be places where there maybe aren't as much light or sun, and so luckily we as humans have some very smart people, and they've come up with ways to make sure plants still have light, even if it's in a time or place that maybe there's not a whole lot of light for them. So that's why we have different plant lights you might see. Some of you might have them, but it helps our plants grow even when there's not actual sunlight. It mimics or acts just like the sun. So I'm gonna add a little bit of orange and yellow to mine. You can do yours how you would like. All right, our next thing that a plant needs, are you ready, is space. So this is something that maybe you didn't think about. You probably knew it, but probably didn't realize it, that it actually is something that a plant needs. So this doesn't mean space like outer space. This means it needs actual space to grow. It needs an area to be somewhere where it's spread out. It doesn't want to be right next to anyone. So I'm going to use my brown for soil. Just like you guys sometimes, I bet you guys actually need space too. We don't need it in the same sense as a plant. And I don't know where my green crayon went, so I'm going to use a green colored pencil. You don't need space like this, but we all kind of need, sometimes we need some room to spread out. So this is space because a plant not only can get really big, but on the top, they can get really big underneath as well. Their roots are so important. Just like these leaves are important to them as well. So if there's lots of them really close together and they're all crowded, they're not gonna all get that light. They're not gonna all be able to spread out. They're not gonna be able to grow really big because they're gonna be super crowded. So it likes to have space and be spread out. I'm sure you guys like to have your own space sometimes too. So it's very similar, but we don't need the space like our plants do. So they do need space. Another thing, which is something that we also need, they need water, just like we need water. Water helps a plant so much, just like it helps us as people as well. So we want to make sure that we are giving our plant water. Plants are really neat in how a lot of them can store water for a long time, which is kind of cool. And their water is really important. A lot of the time they need that water in order to stay strong, to be healthy. You want to make sure that you're watering your plants when it needs to be watered, just like you guys water yourselves. So you may not put water on you like we do for plants. We do usually to clean, but plants also drink in the water. So they have their roots at the bottom. I told you, sometimes their top parts, depending on what it is, can get really tall and big and spread out. Underneath the ground, they have roots. And those roots are like little tiny straws, and they suck up the water and they suck up nutrients. And so they need water because they like to be hydrated and drink just like you guys do. Another thing that they need is air. This is actually something that we as humans also need. we need air, and I always say plants are really neat and they're so cool because plants kind of work with humans. So we really do need plants to survive. But plants do this awesome thing, especially trees, where we breathe out certain things. It's called CO2, and it's not super healthy. And what the plants do is they actually breathe that in. They like it, and they clean the air, and they put it back out, and they give us fresh air. So they need air just like we do, and we kind of work together with them. And the last thing that a plant needs is soil. Soil is a fancy word, another word to say dirt, pretty much. They need that to grow. They spread their roots into it. Not all plants need soil though. Just like not all plants need a ton of water. Some plants don't need a ton of light. They only need a little bit. There are some plants that are called air plants that actually don't need soil, and they do better without soil, but they're very special types of plants. So it depends, but most plants, especially a pumpkin, they definitely need soil. So we need to put them something in for their roots to grow into, because like I said, their roots can get very, very wide, they can spread out, and they can suck up all that water. So we need to give them a lot of space and a lot of soil so their roots, because their roots are really tiny and thin and they kind of spread out. So they need all these things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my scissors. And do you see how we have a really big rectangle around everything? I'm going to cut this out. So I'm going to start down here. I'm going to cut on that straight line. Cut, cut, cut. And cut that off. And I'm going to cut, 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 cut this off. Turn. See, I turn my paper. Remember, we can always turn our paper. It's much easier than turning our hands. I cut off my last piece. There we go. And we want to always make sure that we pick up our scraps. I have a little tiny trash can that I use for all my scraps. I'll put it in my little trash can. Put it out of the way so I don't drop them. And my next thing I'm going to need is my glue stick. So just like before, when I'm gluing down, I don't need a whole lot of glue, especially because I'm just gluing the paper. Paper is not super strong. It's not heavy. I don't need to glue down a lot. So this is the inside of my book. We already did all about my pumpkin. I'm going to actually put this right here. See my fold? I'm going to put it right near it. You're going to have some space on the top and bottom. I don't want to put it in the middle though, because I'm going to put something else right here. So I'm going to put my two hands down. See how my left hand, my paper's right under it? That's where I'm going to glue it. This I'm going to use for something else. So I'm going to take my glue. Again, I don't need a lot of glue. So last time I showed you can do the dots. Another way you can do it is just see my quick lines. I like this glue because I can see where it is and then it dries clear, but sometimes it likes to start to turn clear before I'm ready. So I'm going to put it down, rub, 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 using flat hands. Uh-oh, moved a little bit. Okay. And now I have two of my papers left. Don't worry, we're going to be gluing down a few other things in here as we go. So let's go ahead and get started with our actual pumpkin experiment.